does anybody want to address?
You want to do that first, Mr. Chairman?
I'm not the chairman, but that's what we always do. It says it right here. There might not be anybody want to say anything.
Okay, are there any visitors wishing to address the committee? Seeing none. Bill, at this time, would you please introduce to the audience who the first...
Don't start.
Sure, we have a couple of folks who are here who the returning commissioners have met before and had input and heard from, and then want to introduce them so that the new commissioners can put a face to the name. First, this is Jim Hart on my immediate left. Jim is the jail management consultant with CTAS and has a long history of managing jails in both the military and in the public sector. And, we've relied on Jim throughout this process. And in your black notebook, there's a study that Jim has done. He's done about 3 studies for us over the last little while, and not a little while, the last 8 years, and has been someone that we've depended on for feedback. And Jim's a really good resource, and people all across Tennessee brag on him and what he offers. Next to him is Bob Bass. Bob is with TCI, which is the Tennessee Corrections Institute. That's the group that certifies jails in Tennessee. And both of these gentlemen will be involved in reviewing our plans when we get to that point and making sure that we meet the standards and that when everything's said and done, it can be certified. So they're here to answer any questions when we get to the Q&A section in the last 30 minutes of the meeting. And but primarily what today's meeting is for you to hear from Moseley Architects. It's the firm you see in your notebook that was picked a couple of years ago to lead us through this process, the first 2 steps of the process. And then today they've come here to introduce themselves to the new commissioners, reacquaint with the returning commissioners, and talk about what they've done to this point and what some of their ideas are for the site that we've selected over here. This is Dan Mace. He's one of the principals of Moseley Architect. And this is Todd Davis. He's one of their jail consultants and is heavily involved on the correction side of it. So, Dan, we'll turn it over to you, and it's your show.
Bill.
Hey, Taylor, we've got one gentleman who wants to speak.
Okay. Come to the podium.
I'd like to do it towards the end if that's all right.
We have a schedule for the first.
Okay.
You won't leave it here, you got to get to the podium.
Okay. I'm Neil Johnson. I serve with the privilege of y'all for the Civil Service Board for the Sheriff's Department. And I wanted to share a few things that I see in doing my duty with them in respect to the jail personnel, the job they're doing, and the amount of effort that they have to put in to get their job done on a daily basis. We have people over there that are dedicated, making very modest wages, but I'm so impressed with some of the things that they do and some of the things that they have to put up with on a daily basis, and the lack of understanding by many of us exactly what they're going through. The other thing I'd like to point out is we're running a very inefficient jail out of necessity, not out of wish. That requires a lot more personnel, very dedicated personnel, to do the job. That runs the cost up for running a jail. Not just for personnel, but for the time that it takes for them to process people, the amount of times that we have to deal with fights, and everything else that goes on in jail. It's been going on for a long time. From your standpoint, I was part of one of the early on study committees for the it's time to take action without delay. You need to be informed, and you have the opportunity to get input from the people that are doing their job right now, what it takes for them to do their job, how much room they need to take to do their job, to do it safely. I go back to these people being an expert area doing that. I appreciate y'all's dedication to serve the community. It's now time to take action to make that happen, because we're throwing money down the rat hole, maintaining that jail, while we're trying to decide what we're going to do. That's all I have. Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else wishing to address the group? Bill, do you know of any old business that needs to come before us?
No, sir, we're ready. We're ready.
At this time, Bill, if you don't mind, would you introduce our guest?
We have. We've already done that. We're ready for Dan.
Well, I thought you might want to do it again.
Come in, Bernie.
I'll introduce myself. That's fine. Again, my name is Dan Mace, Vice President of Moseley Architects, and I head up our justice sector project portfolio. And of course, with me, Todd Davis is in charge of our criminal justice consulting group that we have. And Todd actually is not an architect, but he's a former major with the Sheriff's Department in North Carolina, so he actually ran a jail of similar size himself. So it's very unique that a firm like mine would have this type of operational experience to help you move your project along. Well, we've been working with a lot of familiar faces here for the last couple of years, as Bill said, and I appreciate the opportunity to come speak with the new board members and introduce our firm. When we were retained to do the study, it was phase 1, phase 2. When we interviewed was for the formal architectural design, architectural and engineering design. And so the county went through a selection process at that time, and we were fortunate enough to be selected. So I'm here today to convince you made the right call back then, so we can move this project forward as you decide to, the option to move forward with. So the first thing I'm going to cover is a little bit of the dog and pony stuff. I'm going to try to run through it real quick just to tell you a little bit about my company. This is what we offer for the team as project architect, jail and court system planning, criminal justice planning and transition. So Todd actually helps train the staff to operate the jail after it's done. We just don't hand the keys off and say, figure out how to work it. A new jail will operate totally different. We'll have new technologies in it, and it's important that the staff is very comfortable and can operate it safely when they commission the building. So Todd will be handling that effort. Energy efficiency analytics, we'll cover some of that. Security systems and design, we have in-house security system engineers that are not, most architects will go out and hire someone in the industry. And that's kind of like the fox watching the hen house, because they're going to put bells and whistles that you don't need. Our guys, John Edmond heads that up, and he's probably one of the best in the country. He was with Cornerstone and actually wrote software for their security systems. He heads that up for our group. Local engineering, McGill Associates will be doing our site civil engineering. We do not do that in-house. So everything we do in-house is mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineering, fire protection engineering. It's all under Moseley Architects. So we're not hiring a whole bunch of consultants that we have to worry about their schedules. I control their schedules. We've been around over 50 years. Focused on Todd and I focus on the adult jail and correctional facilities with over 145 projects in the last 10 years alone. County court judicial facilities also. We do those on our justice project. We've done over 85 in the last 15 in the last 10 years alone. And we've got some bench strength amongst our offices. We'll be serving you out of our Charlotte office, about 2.5, 3 hours away, very close. So, and that's where our justice group is based. And we've done some energy efficient buildings. I'll cover some of that in a little bit. Some real savings to be generated by doing some of these strategies, some energy efficient strategies. The jails are energy hogs because you've got a bunch of toilets, you've got to power never goes off. It's 24/7. So it's very important that you consider energy efficient concepts when you plan your building. We've been recognized nationally, published nationally. This is Correctional News Magazine on a regular basis. Also, in terms of courthouse design, we've been recognized and published with the National Center for State Courts and the AIA. And again, I mentioned some of the stuff that we do in-house. These are all of our services that we bring to the table. This is just a list of recent projects in the last 10 years. That's jails, and this is courthouses. Of course, this is an early rendering of one of our concepts for you with the Phase 1 services that we've already accomplished for you. I've generated 3 volumes of information as we've studied this over the last couple of years. It gets kind of heavy. I have to put them in three different binders, but this was a concept that we were looking at on a remote site during the course of that study and did some renderings of what conceptually it might look like. Got some nice quotes. Miss Harrell liked our effort. And this is Rockingham County Judicial Center is a jail facility, a law enforcement facility, and a court facility that was built all at one time under that concept. It's also the first LEED Gold justice facility east of the Mississippi. So a lot of people have toured it just for that. I'll tell you about some of the performance of that building. You know, y'all know what LEED is. It's basically a green, what they call a green building, energy efficient building. That just means it's been certified as such. LEED Gold is a very high level of certification. Transylvania County over in Brevard, this was a public safety facility we did for them. We also master planned to have a courthouse there, and they retained us at the beginning of last year. It's currently on hold, but they retained us, and we're going to place this new courthouse when they move the project ahead adjacent to the public safety facility on the same campus.
Excuse me, Dan, why did they put that on hold? That's what we visited.
Yeah, you visited the public safety facility. The courthouse that was going next to it, they put it on hold because they wanted to reconsider expanding the one downtown again. And so that's where that is. Yeah, that's what kind of held it up. Guilford County, I'm just going to kind of cruise through these projects. This is the largest capital project Guilford County's ever done. Finished 3 months ahead of schedule and about $1 million under budget. So it's the largest capital project they've ever done. That's a very large jail. This one's over in Iredell County. This is again a vertical jail expanded onto the existing Justice Center. This was under construction. It's going to complete in July. Harnett County, again, I'm just going to kind of throw you a whole bunch of projects at you. This is Charleston County's. This was a $90 million project. This was finished with 0 change orders. And they said it's the smoothest capital project they've ever done. I was actually there yesterday. We're doing a juvenile expansion for them.
Is that Charleston, South Carolina?
Charleston, South Carolina. Dorchester County's right actually beside Charleston. We did that facility. That's fairly recent, about 352 beds, $19 million. Again, completed ahead of schedule. Very rare to see a jail finish ahead of schedule, but we know how to do them right. This is some stuff we're getting ready to build. This was one in Southern Virginia. It's Henry County Jail. We bid this probably in about 2 months, Todd, I think. Bid it in about 2 months. So we'll have some recent costs on that facility. It's about 400 beds. This one's under construction. It's going to wrap up this summer. Pickens County, just below Clemson. And Greenville County, South Carolina. This is probably one of the lower cost facilities we did. We did this one, I guess, in the mid-2000s for $12 million for 450 beds. And it's just the beds. There's a lot of dorm facilities in that, but that shows you, it just depends on the job. I can build a dorm cheaper than I can build single-cell housing. It's important that you build the beds that you're going to need and not spend money on the beds you don't need. Actually, we got this 65% done. I've been to Guantanamo twice. We're doing the high-value detainee facility that I'm not cleared to see Camp 7, but this is what they're going to call Camp 8. There's been some press on it lately. They've reactivated us on the project. This is going to be the most secure detention facility in the world when we're done with it. We even have it obfuscation of satellite imagery so they can't. This is where Sheikh Mohammed is going to age and die in. So we actually designed it for geriatrics, and it's a very interesting project in Guantanamo. I think I'll be heading back there this summer. Looks like it's back on go again. Now some courts. This is York County Family Court. It's just below Charlotte. It's a purpose-built family court facility. It's under construction. Nash, we just finished this one up. It's a historic courthouse located adjacent. I mean, it's located adjacent to their historic courthouse. The one on the right's the new part, so it had to kind of blend in. This one just was completed. Hanover courthouse, more contemporary. Spotsylvania, more traditional. Just Fredericksburg, more traditional. You can see we've got quite a command of courthouses as well, which this project involves both. A little bit about our approach moving toward the next phase is we want to be good listeners. Your core group, your jail planning committee, and of course with the state agencies, we want to make sure we listen and incorporate. It is your building, and you establish, you pick the option. We'll develop it to be the most staff efficient, cost effective option that we can that will serve your needs individually. We don't have a cookie cutter plan that we're just going to plop down and you're going to have to figure out how to make work. It's going to be something that works for you. Somewhere between this and this is where we're going to end up. I promise you. A lot of times it ends up being closer to the outhouse, but I've never had a project that had an unlimited budget. So we understand we work for the county, and you will have means that are set forth, and we don't go over those. So we'll work. Matter of fact, a lot of times if we do exceed a budget, we'll rebid it at no cost to you until it comes within those approved funds. The way I look at it is you're hiring a jail expert that does these buildings. I'm confident enough to know what these things cost, what the market is, and if I don't always have my bids come in on budget, but most of them do. That's why I can say that was a good level of confidence. A little bit about the design of these facilities. There are 5 major, I think, things about a justice facility that we need to make sure that whatever decisions we make, we don't compromise these. Obviously, number 1 is safety, security. That's where your problems are right now with your current justice facility. But we want to make sure it's as safe as it can be. Cost, of course, I just covered that a little bit, and about coming within the associated funds. You don't go back to the table and ask for more. Function driven, it's got to be functional. I was trained by a Depression-era architect, and he hammered a lot of things into my head. It wasn't a very nurturing environment, let's say. But I never forgot the things he yelled at me about. But one of the things he did tell me is a corridor is only good from getting point A to point B. If you can limit those and keep them simple and don't meander around and keep them double loaded, so you have functions on both sides of them, you maximize that, and therefore you haven't paid for wasted space. So I'm an efficiency nut. So I think a jail is actually that's planned like that to be efficient is actually safer to operate and saves you staff in the long run. So it's kind of why I think I've gravitated to the justice market. Cost control. We understand this is serious business, so we will have regular cost estimates that we'll share with you. And we don't get to go to the next phase. There's several phases in an architectural planning stage: the schematic design, design development, construction documents. We don't move to the next phase until you approve where we are from a budget standpoint as well. This is some of our track record. Like I say, we haven't hit them all, but most of the time we're comfortably within our budgets that we've established together. And we've got this, by the way. I know I'm running through it kind of fast, but we've got this whole presentation we'll leave with you. We made copies of it so you can study it in more detail if you'd like. So Todd, you want to talk about transition?
Yeah, just kind of
forward that button.
Kind of briefly, Dan talked about efficiencies. The staffing efficiency and the staffing drives the design from the beginning, because you can build a building, but once you pay for it, the cost of staffing and operations lasts forever. So that goes on and on. So if we can design it to where we can decrease the number of staff it takes to run it, then you're way ahead of the game. And then, like Dan said, officer safety. I may be a little prejudiced coming from that profession. That's a tough job to do every day. And so officer safety should be paramount in what we do. We also have in-house, probably the only architecture firm that I know of that we have in-house policy and procedure. That's all that they do is write law enforcement, jail policies, and PREA policy. Some firms may not even know what PREA is. Prison Rape Elimination Act that came in '03. So we're very fortunate in that, and that has some design elements with it as well. Liability and risk. I teach all the time on jail liability. I just taught a class Monday on that. Because inmates have nothing better to do than to sue you. As I'm sure you're probably aware. Contracted services. Jails have to contract some privatized services, like your inmate medical, your inmate food service, inmate telephone service. Well, there's ways to maximize and get the best benefit out of that. So far, worked with the mayor and his staff on an inmate RFP for inmate medical, which mayor I think has already proven to have saved you money already. Same way with your inmate food service. Those are services that you have to provide, so why not maximize their benefit as well? We talked about the PREA review. We have an in-house same division that does the policies and procedures is an in-house PREA expert. She has spoken all over the Southeast on PREA and what it means and what you have to do. We have her evaluate any of our designs from the very beginning, not only to look for any PREA compliance issues. Integrate security. You talked about John Edmond. We actually recruited him away from a company that may actually ultimately end up bidding on your security system, because we felt like he was one of the best out there. And now he represents Hamlin County in putting that design together. All these companies are going to bring to you all their bells and whistles. And not every bell and whistle has an operational efficiency to it. If it brings some operational efficiency, then it's worth it. But we don't get hung up on just a bell and whistle, because that's what it is. It's got to prove to be more staff efficient, help the staff, have some life safety benefits to it as well. Talk about non-proprietary and open protocol. We want you to be able to work on that system yourself instead of having to hire somebody that's got to fly from Alabama. For whatever reason, 95% of all the security electronics companies are based in Alabama. And having run a jail, we would spend $8,000 to $10,000 before they ever got on site. And to me, that's crazy. So we try to design the systems that your staff can learn how to work on, and that you can get non-proprietary parts, so when something breaks, you can replace it, as opposed to paying somebody to fly out here every time they need to work on access control or camera. We think that's very critical. Dan, you want to talk about the sustainability?
Thanks, Tom. Again, we've designed, and we actually designed the first federal prison with the Federal Bureau of Prisons to be LEED certified. Again, this just means an energy efficient categorization and award. You can see that the highest recognition you can have is a platinum. We've done actually 6 platinums. One is our headquarters office is actually a LEED platinum, but gold is the next level down. It's very almost impossible to get a detention facility or justice facility to a platinum. You're kind of going to treehouse at that point. So, but gold is attainable, and silver, and we've got a lot of those you can see that we've done. So we have a lot of experience, and it's not just a theory to us. We've got a lot of data that shows how the performance of our building is holding up. You know, one thing we try to inform you about is the building. Everybody looks at the initial capital cost or construction cost that a contractor will bid it. But over the lifespan of the building, which is a 40, 50 year plus building, probably 75% of the total cost of the building will be in operations and maintenance and utility costs. So if we can reduce those, like Todd's talking about operational efficiencies, we can save the county money year in, year out by designing the most efficient layout possible. The same with the building systems. You know, we can save money at construction time by putting a cheap roof on it and cheap mechanical systems on it. But if there's two things I hear about buildings I tour is, man, if you architects could just keep the roof from leaking and have the mechanical system work right, we would like it. And so we don't try to save money there. I don't think that's where you grab the savings. Again, it's in those building efficiencies and how it's laid out is where you can save money. And establishing one that's going to save you in utility and maintenance costs over time. You see the iceberg. So underneath the surface is where your biggest chunk is. This is Rockingham we talked about. Now this is real numbers here. We actually to get to LEED Gold, there was some initial cost to the construction of the project that we put in there. But we had a 6.37 year buyback on those. We actually, our energy model said it's 10 years. We sat down with the owner and said, well, if it costs extra money, if I have a 10-year break-even horizon, that makes good sense for the county. You know, if it's 20 years, maybe not. We'll just not do that. So we actually, in reality, all the strategies we put in this building were paid back in less than 7 years. And the life cycle savings over 40 years on this building will net over $11 million in savings had we not done that. So that's a big number. So this county is saving year in, year out, and that adds up over time. So we're very proud of that. And that's real numbers. That's not made up numbers. It's not
Hey,
theory.
let me ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
What was the cost of that Rockingham jail? I know it was up there, but I
The
forgot.
Rockingham jail is just under $30 million.
Okay, so that's about 1.7 to do it.
Yeah,
That's how much it
the
costs.
strategies we put in there cost an extra $1.7 million.
Paid back in 6 years.
Yes, sir.
What, is there an economy of scale that kicks in, or is it like 1.5 to 2 for whatever?
It depends on the strategy.
Yeah.
See, John Nichols that heads up our energy analytics department, we've actually run an energy model at schematic design. So we'll run it and look at how it performs
Okay.
virtually, and then he can say, well, if we do this, look what's going to happen to it. It immediately gives us feedback on how much you're saving. So it's a great tool. It's called Safara. Safara. I never can pronounce it right.
There's not a rule of thumb between, say, 1.5 and 2.5 that it would cost. You don't know.
But you're in the range of what those strategies that make sense. It's like 1.5 to 2% of the cost of construction. You know.
Okay.
But the good thing is, like things like PV, solar arrays, the cost of those, we haven't really been recommending those because the cost of them didn't have that benefit. But you're right, the cost of that has been dropping dramatically. So we're keeping an eye on that, even to the point, because we'll end up with a large roof area that you can put solar PVs on. In fact, Charleston County has solar PVs on top of it. But we can actually bid that as an ad alternate and price that at the time of bid so you can see, because it's constantly lowering, it might get to the point where it has that a good break-even horizon for you to consider for saving energy.
We actually run these energy analytics and try to make them energy efficient, whether you elect to go LEED or not. We have a lot of counties that we go through the same strategies. I'm not downplaying LEED, but you basically paying for a plaque that says you are LEED. I'm an old country boy. Give me the savings in the light bill and the water bill. I don't care what that plaque says. And so we go through those exercises anyway, and to see what's worth the investment to get that payback.
Was that gold, or was that?
Yeah, Rockingham was LEED Gold, yes, sir.
Okay.
Transylvania County, the one that you visited in Bahar, was silver. So it didn't quite have the same categories.
Was it the water and something else? I can't remember. I remember them talking about it.
Yeah, a lot of the savings are in our building envelope. We have a weather and a waterproofing, you know, and a height R values on the wall systems and roof systems. So you're not air conditioning and heating the world. Right. And they're very tight, contained environments. That way we can control it and can keep the cost down. Also, in terms of walking into a room, you may have an occupancy sensor that will activate the room when you walk in. Stuff like that. It's just good common sense stuff.
We don't want to be like TVA. They had that building here, but it was amazing how the lights would go off during the day because somebody was asleep.
That's right.
But they weren't doing anything, so they took them out.
That's right. Sometimes you can, if you're too still, it won't pick up your movement. Another tool that we bring to offer you to help, I'm trained as an architect. I'm used to looking at building plans and everything, but most of us aren't. So right now, the way we draw buildings, it isn't drawn by hand or using AutoCAD. It's called Revit, and it's a three-dimensional modeling program. So when we draw a door or plop a door down on the plans, it actually puts the door in 3 dimensions, so we can model the building. And so what you're seeing here are actually computer-generated renderings of a courtroom. Judges, have to have sight lines that suit how they like to conduct their proceedings. So we virtually place the judge in his chair. He can manipulate the model. He can look around, he can stand up, he can sit down, he can look at where the clerk is, look at the witness. A lot of judges want to see the witness's hands for hand movement. A lot of people, if they're guilty, they'll start fiddling with their hands, and the judges want to see that. And a lot of people don't know that don't design courthouses. But sight lines are critical, and acoustics are critical, so we can show how the finished product's going to look way before you get into it. And so it's a great tool for communication. And you can see the one to the bottom right is a sight line into 2 housing units. There's actually a wall that runs right between this. I think you, sir, were talking about a radial type of housing where you can sit in there in an elevated room and see a bunch of different housing units. That's what we call a radial concept. But that's kind of what that was illustrating there. And we can show how well you can see into it. A lot of times, if you're sitting, I've seen it done in a lot of jails that are poorly designed. They'll have a horizontal mullion right where the officer sits. Well, you didn't see that in the drawing because the drawing wasn't modeled right. So when he's actually sitting there and wants to look,
We've got a two-way mirror that is wrong incorrectly.
Yeah, that kind of stuff drives me nuts. So, we look at all that ahead of time so things are placed right. The devil's in the details on these things. We get one chance to do this right. Another thing the BIM Revit program allows us to do is what we call clash protection. Again, having all of our engineers in-house, we can, we run this model and we press the clash protection and activate it. It'll shine up red like if a piece of ductwork is hitting a structural beam. It's amazing what this thing does. And so, you would have never seen that, but you would have encountered it in the construction and had to lower a ceiling or something, had a change order. So it's a great tool to help us find where we might have a mistake pending. This is from your presentation in November, I think, that Bill gave, just in terms of where you are in terms of your average daily population. I didn't update these from what you presented in November, but you can see you've got some needs here, and you're aware of how critical. I wouldn't be standing here and talking to you if you didn't already realize how critical the need is here. We've got it down to 2 options, as I understand it. One is on the county now purchased property, beside the Justice Center. This concept included 2 new courtrooms and about 480 new jail beds, and it would be physically connected to the existing Justice Center that would still maintain activation. We would renovate those to meet the state standards as best we could and get their approval before we could do those renovations. But this would be kind of a phased approach where you would build the new beds. It would have the new core on the ground level. Now jail core, things like property storage, the intake, booking, the kitchen, those are things in a jail that need to be sized for the ultimate capacity of the jail, because you can't shut down the jail in order to expand them. And they're kind of embedded. So we like to plan those for the 600, 650 target that Todd's study and Jim's study said that the county was going to need. So those are sized right, and then we just add beds. And we want to plan it so you can expand it later. So in talking about this with Bill, there was different ways you could expand this facility and this concept. One would be, when you needed the jail expansion, is you would then demolish the Justice Center and expand in that direction if you wanted to stay on the site, or you would close Allison Street and start expanding in that direction to the left on this image right here. So this version is expandable. It can accommodate that were you to choose this option. This was kind of how that was stacking up. Again, this is not the radial concept per se, it's more of a parallel concept. We call it the rear chase idea. You can see between each, where the cells back up, there's a chase in the back. So the maintenance guys love this because they can come in and address most of the maintenance concerns without having to close down a housing unit. So when the maintenance guys come in with tools, you've got to shut down and lock down a housing unit, and then you've got the potential for them swiping a screwdriver and kill somebody with it. So if they can get to it behind it without affecting the ongoing operation of the housing unit, it's more staff efficient, and maintenance guys are happy with us for that. So this is a scheme that shows that. But again, these were planning schemes. I mean, we probably got another 20 of them that we've looked at. So I'm not telling you this will be the design of your jail, but this is what formed that price that we used for the concept 1. This was concept 2, where we were going to already have property across Allison Street. And as part of the expansion, this would build more beds initially and provide for the courts, another couple of courts as well. But it was really replacing your current beds in this scheme. So this one had more initial beds, and this one is actually, instead of, the negative part about concept 1 is we were putting a core on the ground level, putting jail beds on top. Now if you're an inmate and you're not a nice person, and you know the jail administrator's office is below you, what are you going to try to do in your cell? You flood it. Exactly. Now, we've got ways to mitigate that. Don't think that you have to throw that option out. We would recommend a vacuum plumbing system that uses minimal water, that you cannot flood it. So something like that would be what we would recommend to you. We can show you some examples of that. But this version here is a single operational level. Rather than being a vertical operation, require no elevator in it. And so all your core is up there, and you can see the real estate it requires to do that. And then the housing unit to the lower part is what we call that radial concept, which is what I was, we were sharing that you saw an example of it where the tower, would look into a number of housing units. Well, given we've got like 500 beds shown in this option, thereabouts 500 to 600, there would be 2 towers in this option, but it still operates on a single operational level. So I'm not a big fan, if you can help it, of taking inmates up an elevator. That's one of the places that they feel like they can attack an officer. So this one is no elevators in it. It's a single operational level. But it does require more real estate. So those are kind of the 2 options I think we're looking at. Bill shared with you some costs. Of course, we would come in underneath these costs. I think these were total project costs he was sharing with you. Our construction numbers are less than this. But these estimated costs per square foot are what we're seeing in the market right now. Last year, prices did go up dramatically. We had Todd and I had a project. It was 2 projects very similar with a radial concept. We bid one last year. It was based almost an identical mechanical system to one we had bid 3 years earlier, and the mechanical equipment was twice the cost in 3 years. So we saw that this is trained equipment, good mechanical equipment, but for some reason the equipment costs really skyrocketed last year. So hopefully we're seeing it stabilize this year. But these numbers that Bill shared with you, I think, are good planning numbers we would come up within. And we just bid an office last week, and it was about $215 a foot. So these numbers are good planning numbers, because we're looking at, if you told me to go right now, we're not bidding the project for probably 10 to 12 months. So we've got to anticipate what the market's going to be when you receive bids.
And these estimates are based on all in. That's all the cost. It's not, we could show you a construction cost, but then you've got to pay for cameras. You need, all the other stuff that you need. So when we show it, we show all in project cost, everything you got to have to do it. We see that happen a lot of times, that costs are quoted a lot lower, but then they go, oh, well, you needed cameras? Oh, you wanted beds in that jail? Oh, well, that's something extra. So we include everything on day one.
There was some staffing costs that I think Todd worked up with the concepts concept 1 and concept 2. Concept 1 is a little bit more staff because of having to go vertical. You know, it's just, it reduces footprint, which is good, but it increased staffing a bit. And that type of housing that we had with the rear chase side by side is more staff intensive than the radial concept. So I do like the radial concept from that staffing standpoint. We can really save you over time. You can see the difference there. And that's every year. So, you know, that's a big savings if we can work with the radial concept. Now, one thought I had, you know, it's kind of a hybrid between the two schemes. If you said, Dan, we really like the radial concept, but we like to stay, at least in phase 1 of the project, on the current property that we own without breaching across Allison, we're not willing to do that. We're going to make that might be an expansion zone later on. Then what I would do is take the core, I would take 1/2 of, let me go backwards. Let's see. Yeah, 1/2 of that, and that's a T shape. If you look at that, where the housing is, and I would stack those 2 T's on top of each other. So you'd have 2 housing units in a T shape on top, which would reduce that size, and then I would redesign that rectangle on the bottom to fit up underneath that end. So it would be like the concept 1, but it would have the radial staffing implication versus the side-by-side staffing implication. That makes sense? So the hybrid might be what you end up with to start with. So just, you know, this is all part of the next phase, is the design phase, where we go through and hammer that out with you. What we hopefully be doing with you soon. So this was the total beds of each option. Concept 1 really had use of a lot of your current beds, which some of those I think we would lose, so it really wouldn't be that many. We just wouldn't be able to get it to meet current standard. You know, the difficulty, I think, you know, Jim Bob will attest to it as well. When you build a substantially new facility with a lot of new beds in it that meet current life safety and detention, state and national detention standards, and are PREA compliant, and you build a substantial number of them and try to operate a few grandfathered ones, well, if something happens again in your grandfathered place and you have all these new beds, and if I were a half-decent attorney, I could say, well, why did you deem my client to be less important and put them in these dangerous beds versus the brand new beds you built? So, you know, we got to be really careful that the beds that we leave behind and use in concept 1, if you want to do that, or meet that current level of standard, so the life safety is in place there. I think that's very important, because we want to take the liability off of the county, not leave you with a contingent liability after we're done. That makes sense? This is a schedule. I anticipate you may ask me, you know, well, where are we right now, Dan? If we were to start, how long would it take you? Well, like I say, you can see from the studies we're very familiar with your needs, so we don't have to step back and learn on your time. So we can really reduce that schematic design phase to 2 months, and then that puts us into another 8 months to develop the design, to get the drawings ready to advertise in the marketplace. What I'm recommending that you consider right now is having good educated observation in the county's interest. Like some people call those people a clerk of the works. Sometimes on projects of this magnitude, we've got construction administrators that we can put out there full-time on the job site. But I think the best thing to do is, if you've got a retired job superintendent that was in construction, and their grandkids go to school here, you hire them to be on your job site during the course of construction, and you get that extra set of eyes on it. I think it's valuable, because these buildings are complicated and they've got to do stuff right. Otherwise, the inmates will figure out where the weakness is. But anyway, that's about a 10-month total duration, and that includes getting approvals from the state, and then we would bid it. I recommend you pre-qualify your contractors. I don't think you want a contractor figuring out how to build his first jail on your jail. We make sure they're quality, reputable companies. So we send out pre-qualifications, and from that group we shortlist, and that group is who competitively bids the project. You follow me? That way you don't get the guy coming up from Florida that can be bonded and is going to make life difficult for you. So keeps them out by getting quality bids on the project. And then the CA phase, our estimate is about plan for about 24 months for construction and transition. Title, you know, after the project's complete, substantially complete, title usually takes 30 to 60 days training with the staff to get you ready to move the first inmates in. But it does, you just don't move inmates in after the contractor walks out. You got, there's a little break-in period, so for training. So
It'll be so much new technology that they've never been exposed to before. In counties that I see, get the keys to the building on Monday and start putting inmates in on Tuesday, well then Wednesday, those inmates are going out the back door because the people have not had properly time to train to learn how to operate it. So then you got inmates going out. I can cite you case after case, and I'm sure Jim and Bob can as well. You've got to take that time to make sure that that staff is acclimated to that building and knows how to run it.
So, you know, unfortunately, we can't solve your problem right now, but, you know, we're 3 years from solving your problem at earliest. So, and having the inmates move into a new safe facility. So that's kind of where we are right now. Just to kind of conclude my presentation part is these are kind of some things I think we bring to the table to offer you. We hope you'll choose to continue working with us. Really enjoyed working with you, and you know, we want to see these guys. You see a facility that you're happy with, and these guys are safe to be in, and that's kind of why I do what I do. You know, I'm speaking to the choir here, but you know, these guys are very underappreciated, and they do a lot, and they're asked to do a lot to keep the county safe. And you know, appreciate your leadership to move this thing forward and help them out.
I would commend the county on getting, and I hate to say it in front of Jim and Bob because they're here, but including them, because you've got two of probably the most knowledgeable jail people in the state of Tennessee right there. I usually don't give Jim a comment like that in front of him, but I mean, it is what it is. But you're
Great resource.
very fortunate to have them.
Who are those two?
They introduced, Jim's with CTASC and Bob is with TCI.
So I'd like to ask if you have any particular questions of us, or is there any questions of Bob and Jim?
You're talking about 12 months to get architectural drawings drawn
And bid,
and bid.
and get bids.
And
So
you're
10
talking-
months for the design from where we are,
Once
and
that,
2 months.
once that going from get into construction, how long? That's based on what you've got right now.
Right, about 22 months for construction on this size project, and then 2 months for training. You know, to get all the building, make sure every door works. You know, 2 months of really hammering the building out, what we call commissioning the building.
Change orders when you're doing architectural drawings. Like we get a change order.
Yeah, during construction, you know, change orders, like if
No,
they,
prior to construction, right, just right off the bat.
no, there won't be any of that. I mean, what we usually negotiate is a
You
lump
need
sum.
to know what we want when you bid on this.
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Everything.
Yes, sir.
No changing it.
And no, I'm not sure what you're asking.
I think what Dan told you earlier is kind of the method that we go. If we design something for you and we bid it, and it doesn't come in at the bid that the estimate that we told you, or something that the county can live with, then we're going to redraw, and you're not going to have to pay that. Is that what you're asking?
No, I'm saying like if we, in a drawing, like we want 3 courtrooms, we come back to you and say, well, we just want 1. If we change our size and stuff.
Well, if we were almost about ready to bid and you do that to me, it's gonna require me to invest more time, it'll probably be an additional
So
fee.
you need to know
That, but-
everything we're gonna be doing.
Right, but every phase, again, every phase,
Radials,
right, right,
we want it on 1 level with
right,
no elevators.
right. And we'll have all that hammered out at the end of the first phase. So, in other words, we don't move into the second phase until Bill writes me a letter and says, Dan, we're good with the budget, we're good with the design, move to the next phase. So we like that checks and balances because, you know, otherwise we don't want to get far down the road and have to back up and punt. That costs time. Time is money right now, big time in the market.
This appears to be pretty much a turnkey operation. When you walk out, you hand us a key, we're ready to give them from visitors, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. the equipment that you'll be using in there for intake, would you be providing that new x-ray equipment that examines body cavities to keep the officers from having to do the horrible kind of searches that they do?
Well, we could coordinate that. I think in terms of the cost effectiveness of it, I would probably not include that in the general contractor's bid. That's an equipment. We plan for it and have the connectivity for it, but then we would go out and assist you in purchasing that so you could have that delivered, so you're not paying that contractor's overhead and profit. Because they're gonna put probably 10% on everything that they do.
All of this other equipment's gonna be
Yeah, I always,
add-on.
yeah, I always say that what we put out on the bid is if you were to turn the building upside down and shake it, whatever doesn't fall out is what's in the contract.
Yeah, that would come under your FF&E,
Yeah,
furnitures,
FF&E,
fixtures, and equipment. And so those are, we found it's a lot cheaper for the county to buy direct than to put it into overall construction. You can put it in there, but you're gonna pay a premium for somebody else shopping for you is basically what that means.
I don't know, I'm gonna ask.
Yeah, another thing we've done a lot with a lot of counties is on the food service equipment. You probably have if it's this size facility, you probably have a food service supplier. For those suppliers, you can work it, and Todd's negotiated really good deals where they actually buy your kitchen equipment. That's $300,000 at least right there on a project this size, $400,000. They put it in the per meal price. And so they actually, the county owns it, but they've put it in their meal price that they're gonna allocate over time, essentially mortgage out over time. So you can cut that right off your budget, right off the bat, rather than you buying the equipment, you having to maintain it. They end up maintaining it, and it's just plug stainless stuff, but it's expensive. Now the hood, the kitchen hood, would be in the construction project because it's built in. Again, if you shake it and it doesn't fall out, it's in the contract. But that's a good strategy to consider that might save the county some money.
Yeah, the one, we just finished doing one in the food service company. The equipment belongs to the county on day one, but they prorated over their term of their food service contract, which is usually about 4 years. Well, what I wrote into that RFP is they're basically paying that $360,000 in Granville is what that was. So they're basically giving the county $360,000 loan for 4 years, interest-free. You're still paying for it. You're not getting anything for free, but they're footing the bill for it, and they're charging you added like 2.5 cents per meal, over your meal budget. So you're getting that money interest-free, and so it helps take it out of your capital cost and it goes into your operations.
On the cost of the jail, 47 million, the other one 65 million. What was the number of inmates related to that figure?
There was one was about 480 new beds, and one was 600 new beds.
Okay.
So it was about another 100, 200 beds.
Okay.
One of it had more courts than the other as well. The high number had, isn't that being true?
We had 488 this year, and of course they got to know each other real well. They were in there pretty close. What we're going to do 2.5 years from now, when we have probably 600 inmates.
Well, you need to provide for that. I think in option one, it was that many new beds, but you were going to maintain your current beds as best you could.
What's that going to cost going forward?
Right. Right, you'll be expanding it quicker. If you build more beds now, you're going to have, the ability to grow into it. We don't recommend you build past what you anticipate needing, but but you need to plan for how you would expand it. And that the idea is, if you're doing some smart planning, you design it where you can add housing units without adversely affecting ongoing operations. So you can build a housing unit and just plug a door up, activate the door, and you're in business. And that way the contractor's not having to meander through the building.
These have the appearance of pods that you're actually building on site, is that right? Are you building them on site or bringing them in, stacking them?
Most of the cells that we're building, I know your question, there's two different types of modular cells. And most of the projects, I haven't, the only project I'm doing right now that's a CMU site build is for a juvenile facility for North Carolina, their new prototype, because, they have a different size. It's they call it a sleeping room. It's not a cell. but it's a little different. So I'm using CMU there, but most of all the detention facilities we're doing right now is modular, either precast or steel. And there are benefits of either one of those that will work with you as we go through the design. We know how much these modular cells cost, but we do recommend you either choose a precast modular or a steel modular. If we're going vertical, I'll just tell you right off the bat, use steel because it's lighter and it takes up less area. They're insulated, they're indestructible, their quality control is perfect, and because concrete is less perfect because you're making them forms, and there's some problems that you get into there because you got to stick everything in the form and pour it. But the steel comes out, everyone's identical, and they take up less area, floor area, so I can reduce the footprint of it, and it's lighter, so I'm not having to carry that structure all the way down to your foundation. So they're more cost effective that way if you're going to stack them. In my opinion. But again, we'll look at, we'll go through a cost benefit analysis. That's a kind of an early decision we'll make together. But there's another decision that is important too, just like that, is whether to go electromechanical or pneumatic in your hardware, your remote operations of your doors. Those have initial cost implications as well as long-term maintenance implications. Unfortunately, the lowest cost one initially is also the highest maintenance over time. But we need to work with your staff and you make sure it's something you're comfortable in maintaining going forward and make that decision together.
Mr. Chairman, we need to get this project going as soon as we can. I'd like to move that we authorize Mayor Britton and Commissioner Scotty Long to negotiate a contract with Moseley to provide architectural services for this project and report back to us at the May 11th Jail Study Committee. I'm sorry, March the 11th Jail Study Committee.
I'll second that.
You have a motion and he seconded.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? I think we need to take a roll call vote on this problem.
Okay. Chris Cutshaw. Aye. Randy DeVore.
Aye.
Thomas Dovey.
Yes.
Tim Goins.
Aye.
Bobby Hong.
Aye.
Tim Horner.
Yes.
Scotty Long.
I guess I'm going to say yes.
Wayne Neesmith.
No.
Howard Shipley.
Yes.
Jim Stett.
Yes.
Taylor Ward.
No.
9-2.
Motion carried.
Any other?
Okay, any more questions, anyone? Any more statements, questions?
This number you gave a while ago, 480, did that count any of our existing sales?
No, that does not include any
That's
existing
not
business.
included in, like our workout, the 50 people, the annex?
Right, that would just add to that 480 if you were able to keep that
That's
up.
additional.
Yes, sir.
You could go back to one of those slides first again. You had centers. You had a list of what you've done.
Right there? Is that
No, places you've done.
Oh. Should have gone the other one. Sorry about that. The courthouses or the jails?
Now, keep on going. It's one of the things where you had a whole list of them.
Oh, okay, right at the beginning. Sorry about that. That's courts and that's jails. That's just in the last 10 years, though.
Yeah, I'm gonna leave this
Mr. Rose?
Yes, sir.
When we were discussing the lead part of this, it's adding percentage possibly, and of course, the long-term savings will help carry the cost and all. Is that part of, will that architectural designer, is that something we ask you to add in?
Right.
I know he said that it's always there, and LEED is just a plaque basically, but yet, in the long term, energy savings is a big thing.
What we can do is energy analytics is part of what we negotiate on base contract. This is what we do for every project. But if you wanted to go and move it into LEED, because we'll go through a checklist, we may find where LEED silver that we could do with the strategies that we've agreed to. And you may say, well, Dan, let's go ahead and do this. You need to decide with the way LEED works right now, pretty early in the process, in order for us to follow the guidelines. But I can quote Bill an additional service request. So if it's, I have to get John to get the number, but if you were to do that, I can give you what we would charge to go through the paperwork and stuff to get you LEED certified.
I mean, if we, like your example, if we get to it under 7 years, it sounds pretty like it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, some of those will be introduced. Oh, another thing is the strategies that we agree to, whether you go through LEED certification or not, we'll be able to monetize that as part of our cost estimates that we do. So you'll see the strategies, some of them don't cost any money, but some of them do. We'll tell you what we think that is.
And that includes such as LED lighting,
Right.
Water suppressant systems, whatever.
That's right. You get a lot of points off like the vacuum system I talked about. There's some operational benefits to the vacuum system too. They can turn off a unit if they're going to shake it down and they can't flush it.
I know you're not a manufacturer, but LED lighting, generations are changing as we progress. Are you finding them sufficient?
Oh yes. Every project right now will just say we want to go LEDs. That's even in gyms.
What about vandalism protection? Are they less likely to be vandalized?
Well, where the inmates can get to them, we're going to choose a detention grade fixture that they can't access. So it's a fixture, but that's a light fixture to be protected, so they can't tamper with it.
And when you said occupancy sensors, that's when someone motion detection turns it on, correct?
Right. Obviously, we wouldn't use that in housing because that's controlled remotely from our control operator. But other things like the administrators' offices and admin offices and stuff like that. Yeah, stuff like that.
But that's a little bit of cost up front that will save you.
Exactly. Like in our program, it's a great tool. We can tell you exactly what that's going to do. We plug in your utility rates. We meet with the power company and go through the strategies together. They're a big help. Power companies also use the same software. So it's worthy of that. It's extra effort. It's not easy to do, but I think you end up with a much better performance. I think that's important.
And I didn't mean to downplay LEED. What I was just saying is we're going to do those, we're going to go through those exercises. And sometimes people think, oh, well, if we say we're not going to do LEED, then we're going to get stuck with non-energy efficient buildings.
Well, we want to stay away from quality engineering, or what was that term?
Value
Engineering. Stay away, if in the long run it costs us.
It's designed right to start with, you don't have to.
You're familiar with the property that we have
Yes, sir.
adjacent to the jail?
Yes, sir.
What do you consider the maximum amount of beds you can build on that property?
Depends on how up in the air you want to go. You can keep on going up, and you can add. If you're not talking about demolishing the Justice Center, which I never heard that was going to stay until we get to the new one built. Just a matter of how many more levels we could add. We could build all 600 there vertically, and it would be
according to the folks doing the survey I did the other day, you can build about anything you want to on that property.
Oh yeah, the site's good. It's just
to accommodate 600 to 650 beds, because we're looking at 2 years down the road before we let anybody in the building.
Right.
Is that property big enough to accommodate 650 buildings? I mean, 650 beds?
Well, it is. It is.
Okay.
Your staffing implications will go up, and I think, Harvard will echo that same thing, because when you go up, you're duplicating some staff just because the sight lines are different, your floor.
Even building up, do you not need to make plans for a second tower later?
Well, it would be a adjacent tower. And again, I think at that point, you have to decide, and we would master plan it initially, the decision, which way are you most likely to go? Are you most likely to demolish the existing Justice and build it there, or close Allison and go across there? I mean, that's kind of the two decisions you would make there to decide between. We would plan it to be expandable in either one of those directions.
The plans for the food facility, the restaurant, I call it restaurant, the cafeteria,
Right, all those quarters.
kitchen, would have to be built large enough
Yes, sir.
so it wouldn't have to be expanded when we expand.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
He's got all that, I'm thoroughly interested.
I've got just a couple of questions.
Okay, go ahead.
You, basically, in your speech earlier, you told us that we're wasting staffing right now with the way our jail's designed and such as that. But that once we build this new jail with the latest and greatest technology, that we'll be able to better utilize our staffing. But by your own numbers, right now, with our staffing, we're running at 7.3 inmates per jail staff. But at the best case scenario, with the 620 bed, the option 2, we're only going to be able to have 6.7 inmates per jail staff. So if we put all this money in and do the latest and greatest, we're going to lose efficiency?
As far as your current staffing levels based on your inmates, it's, your staffing levels are based on what your rated capacity is, not what your daily capacity. That's why your TCI is saying you're not in
Well, I
compliance.
understand, but you had said that we were wasting with our staffing, now we're wasting resources. But if we go with this latest and greatest and spend $68 million, it's going to require more staffing. It's going to be
more
less.
staff efficient than what you have now.
Not by what numbers you gave in your presentation. When you said it would require 92 jail staff for the 620 beds, that comes to 6.7 inmates per jail staff.
Thomas, those aren't there.
Oh, okay.
That was numbers that I worked with Gino and Teresa on.
Okay,
Under a concept, that was not their numbers.
okay, I understand.
Yeah, a lot of the decisions we're gonna be making, will all be based upon staff efficiency.
When we're looking at this, though, we're looking at,
Right.
with that, we're looking at additional $2.5 million in staffing costs after we spend $70 million.
It's no way that a new modern design, the way jails are being done now, it's not gonna be more efficient than what you got now. Because the way you're building, and I'm not knocking, it's just the age of it.
Yes, I
And the
agree
way
with
that design type was done then. And inmate to, officer to inmate ratios, really that's not how you staff a jail. It's more or less on 24-hour posts when you identify a post. And Jim Hart can probably speak to that as well, because I think he probably did a staffing with them before. It's, prison systems are done officer to inmate ratio because every prison is a different inmate classification. So jails are a little bit different based on posts that have to be made.
Can I ask one question? And with these guys here, if you've got any questions, you need to ask these guys while they're here, because they've got very busy schedules, and we're fortunate to have everybody here if you've got any questions there. I've got one question that I want you guys to hear the answer of to Bob, is what's the process of, if we're gonna use some of the annex space for housing, and then we have a new building, what are some of the tricky parts as far as certification goes?
Looking at the square footages and the ratios to make sure they meet the standards. Basically, and I'm really looking forward to working with these gentlemen. Basically what happens once the architect's chosen, contract's done, and we go into that design phase, that we get invited to the table for input, and so we know what's going on. That's part of what TCI offers, part of our services for technical support. So we can advise them how you're going to be able to incorporate and use the other beds, what type of confined housing classification they're going to carry, and where they're going to meet the standards. You have two folks that will have to sign off on your plans. At the end, it's going to be the fire marshal. We all are aware of that. but we also do it too. So TCI has to do it, and then we look at the plans from a security standpoint, but we also look at the plans from, does it meet the standards? Physical plant standards haven't changed. 2015, we added more standards. The physical plan has been the same. I've done, along with Jim and then some of our other staff, I guess in the 50s jails in my career or more. And I found out that it just works best if it goes from cradle to grave. That's the terminology I like to use. So if we're the ones that's going to be signing off on the end, invite us to the table at the beginning to help with that. Now, you drive the design, and they're going to build what you want, but we're in the room, along with Jim Hart as a consultant, to talk about what best serves the staff. Like he was talking about the staffing a while ago, you want it where it's not staff intensive. I can tell you from past experiences, we have had architects that left us out of the loop, and they did all that work, and then they came to the table and said, TCI certify this, and we went, no, it doesn't meet. We can't do it. That's embarrassing, and it's back to those billable hours we're talking about. We got to go, wait a minute, we got to change all this up. And, you know, we've had misunderstandings as much as Arkansas firms building a facility in Tennessee based on Arkansas standards, and they're not Tennessee standards. Fortunately, we have fixed that, so it's national standards now. They all work together. But I look forward to doing it. That's part of the service that we offer. So we'll be looking at that and advising you as you go through that. There are some things that can be misstepped. So if we're invited to the table and sit down with the folks in the room, as you start to get your concept and your design picked, we'll be there to answer those. Promise.
I don't wonder if we
Do
should
you,
hear from
any of your officers have any questions you'd like to ask this gentleman?
Just wonder if we can hear from Mr. Hart and overview how you feel about things right now.
Well, I mean, this has been a long process, and congratulations. Once you get the contract signed, it's been a long process. It's definitely been a very needed process, you need a facility. I think that the staffing inefficiency, to sort of give a perspective, is in your jail. You have so many pockets of where people are housed, and it requires them to hit all those different pockets on a regular basis, whether it's feeding or just doing a sighting to make certain that they're safe, collecting laundry, passing mail, all those different things. Where what Todd is referring to in that new design, that new facility, it's all right here. And so we go in and we're able, that hourly check may take 15 minutes versus what you have right now. It takes about 40 minutes. And as soon as we finish, then we got to start all over again. In that area, we can't get anything else done. So I think that's sort of that staffing efficiency or inefficiency. Mr. Doty? Doty, I'm sorry. You bring up a very legitimate concern about staffing. And that's part of what we have to offer. And I know Todd's already given you some thoughts on the staffing, but one of the things that we do sitting at the table is working with you. You've never built a jail. They've built a ton of jails, as you've seen. And Bob and I did part of the process in assistant counties. We're all in this together, okay? And you have to take ownership of the process that you're getting into, and that's what they're offering. Is you take the ownership, and we will do what we can, and we're going to give you some estimates of what it's going to cost if we go this direction and this direction. And it's a really neat process to go through, but you've got to take ownership in that process. And they've talked about site managers, construction managers, and that's down the road a little bit, but that's critical. Those of you that toured Monroe County got to meet their construction manager there, a local firm that's on site day in and day out, Sam Mosier, that's doing a fantastic job and has a great reputation in the community. Again, that's your eyes and ears on the site out there. There's a ton of things that you're going to hear about: transition planning, transition teams, when do we start hiring staff, when do we start training staff, brand new staff, when do we start training staff on how to operate the jail, and all those are things that we can work with you with through that process. The mayor asked a question, and Bob answered it a little bit differently than I. The first thought came to my mind. You have a jail right here. And unless that jail was designed and built to expand, it's basically going to stay what that jail is like. And now you're going to expand on another site. You're basically going to have two jail operations. So the staffing numbers that you saw to operate whatever option you choose is for the new jail. But because you're still going to use, if you choose, if that's your decision, you're going to use the old jail, you're going to have to staff that too. Now those numbers there are going to cover the operation of the new facility, not the existing facility. So sometimes I always sort of think of it in my mind, there's a tilting scale. At some point in time, we can expand so much, and if the jail's not designed for expansion, it becomes inefficient in operations. And we've talked about decertification, and we've talked about concerns about staffing. So that may be one of those options that they've given you that you might in your mind be thinking about. You know what? If we continue to operate part of the old jail, and it's going to take us 30 staff, and now we've got to look at another 100 staff for the new jail, but we can build that new jail and just take 100 staff and eliminate that 30 staff, maybe that's something we want to consider, or you want to have as an option in that process. So I mean, that was the first thought that came to mind when you brought that up. But we're here to help, and we'll be here as much as we can to help you or assist you, and look forward to the opportunity to work with you. We work with a lot of architects, emails and meetings, face-to-face meetings, and texts and everything else. So we're really looking forward to helping you whatever way we can. Does that answer your question?
I'd like to add one other thing. We were here January 9th. You're looking at, you were at 255 capacity at 412 inmates. One of the great things in one of the processes we need to keep in mind is this. You get the new facility, let's stop this vicious cycle of people coming to jail. You've got an opportunity to stop that. That recidivism rate is very, very high down here. So you have ability and a place to have programs. So I know you look at those numbers way down the road, you might have to add on the jail even further down the road, but this is a good time to bring everybody together, identify the programs that's going to help the population here in this county. Let's stop that. I'm just a firm believer in you build it, they will come. There's a place for programs. Let's turn people around when they come to jail. Let's put them where they need to be. Let's get those out services that can help them. Let's reduce their recidivism rate so you don't have to keep building. And I just want to share that because I'm so proud of the decisions and all the hard work that's been done. I've been coming up here 7 years. Yeah, it's been tough, but I'm glad this day's coming. And I look forward to moving forward. I do.
When we went to topic, we looked at one thing we discussed about was larger classroom for this year. And we addressed that issue also. One thing I want to ask is, you said the design for this concept number 2, you said you didn't do a cookie cutter, where did some of these designs come from? Did it come from Bill and the other commissioners? Where did that come from?
Well, we were, when we get a target, we would kind of lay it out. We would just kind of meet with the stakeholders and say, well, how many different housing units do we need to divvy it up into from a medium, maximum, minimum security standpoint? It really was just something that we got in the beds there, in a relationship that we kind of knew worked, and laid out a core of that size from other example projects to kind of use it as a planning tool. That's kind of where we are. So really, the next phase will be the real customization.
Tinker with some to change around.
Yeah, that's right. There's a lot that needs to be done to them from this point forward. So.
When I did the initial bid projections in the first phase, when we did the study was phase 1 and phase 2. First phase was to project the bid needs. We also looked at bid types and different types of classification. And what we found is in your existing facility, you didn't have enough housing types to separate the classifications.
So when we put together some of those base models, they were based on those projections in your needed bed type. And I went back, we got 5, 6 years back and did a historic trend, where you had been, not just last year. So we did several years back.
So your percentage of females as a percentage of population is continuing to go up. We're seeing that everywhere. And, you know, it used to be, it was 10%, you claim 10% female. Now it's 20+%. Something we've seen 30%. So it's changed a lot. It's always opioids. It's been a real big problem. I'm sure y'all have to deal with all that same stuff.
I'm going to answer a question the chairman asked me. If we approve the contract that will be submitted to us and hire them, then we will sit down with them as a commission body and take in the input from the sheriff's staff and tell them exactly what we want. Some of you are really concerned about that, but you will have input.
Oh,
they'll sit down with us.
Yeah, this is not my building, it's your building.
Yeah.
And,
400 million.
so I'm measure of success. We're gonna get to the end of this, you know, we're gonna be within budget, and we're gonna have something that's safe and secure that really addresses the needs here. And, you will get to the end of it and say, we made the right decision. So that's our goal. So we're gonna work with you on that.
Probably the biggest accomplishment that I'm the proudest of is that 85% of the work we do is for repeat clients. So if we didn't do you a good job the first time, they wouldn't be hiring us back. You know, so I think that speaks a little bit to where we look at y'all as a part of the team. And like Dan said, at the end of the day, this is your building, it ain't our building.
You build a building over there now?
Yeah.
I've been over there a bunch of times.
You build it?
I didn't build it, I didn't design it. I actually didn't even want to be in it, to be honest. I didn't want to be in it. Yeah, I've spent many hours over there.
So, I'd heard earlier too that, this design of this jail was all brand new, it still wasn't certified because of the layout. Our jail now.
Now, I can't speak to certification, that's more of a Mr. Bass question, but
I'm not following. Say it again.
If the design of the current jail was brand new, the way it was laid out, it wasn't certified because of all the pockets.
I don't think it meets the current standards.
Right.
It meets current.
It would, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it would be deficient. Duplicate it again?
yeah.
Yeah, it's combustible. That's number one right there. That's number one concern.
You said we can't stay for you, it'll be in standard.
Again,
If we can't get that building certified,
we'll be
why are we
looking
doing
at, if
that?
they use the old beds, we'll be looking.
I think this question was, if we old deal,
If we were just to copy the old
Oh,
design.
copy the old, okay.
Yeah, it wouldn't be certified.
not even just things first.
Estimate this new building should last us what period of time?
Well, you know, Todd's always said that the jail's aging dog years, like dog years, because, you know, the occupants are there all the time and they're trying to tear it up. But, you know, we design 50-plus year buildings, and I think we make decisions based on that type of longevity, just like we do a courthouse. This will have some courtrooms in it, and so it's built to essential building criteria. So it's, in case of a tornado, you need to run to that building once we're done. This will be the safest building in the county, I'm sure. It's like a bunker. So it's, you know, you will need, the biggest thing we're seeing, and we're doing a lot of right now, are changing out 15, 20-year-old security electronic systems. Because technology has really moved on. So it's important that we design it where that can happen. It's pretty much software and computer hardware now. And they might have to change, we might get some cameras to wear out, because it's that technology that you'll see wear out have about 15, 20-year lifespan. So that's really what we designed the backbone of it. We have extra conduit everywhere that you can use. So we try to get them as flexible as possible, because once the thing's built, you know, what drives me nuts, you're going to see all the exposed conduit. Well, the inmates can grab that and do evil things with it. So we try to get all that embedded in the building so it's secure. We're not adding those things onto it. So.
And back when I did the initial bid projections, the further, the longer distance I go out with my projections, I typically, my crystal ball gets cloudier and cloudier. My numbers are pretty consistent 5, 10 years out. but it's dependent on a lot of stuff when you're looking long-term. Your major industry shuts down and you lose a lot of population. Major industry moves in and you gain a lot of population. Tennessee DOC changes some sentencing laws. You know, there's just so much stuff that I can't see 40 years from now. So to say how long will this last, a lot of things play into that.
Yeah, the key is you make your design, whatever decision is readily expandable, easily expandable. So you build that into the concept so you're not just stuck having to replace two of them.
Well, the reason why I asked the question is I want to know how we look at the staffing needs, because that makes a big difference year after year. And if we get farther out with this building and we can reduce it by one design over the other, then obviously we can make a big difference in the cost and the overall cost of the project.
Absolutely.
And that's what we, you know, as we look at the options and schematic design phase, you know, that'll be part of our decision matrix, you know. This version here is might be less money initially, but it's more staff, you know. Does that make sense? You know, those are the kind of questions we'll be answering next.
When Dan first hired me, two things I told him. I said, I need to have input on how the building operates so I can look at it from a staffing efficiency, because my entire career, I had to fight with our county commission to give me enough staff. So I said, I want to make these buildings as staff efficient as possible, so whoever's having to run it didn't have to have the fight I had to have every year. So that's kind of how we look at it.
Something else we didn't, unless I missed it, which is possible. When we look at building this jail, more than likely vertically, we've got limited space over here. What are we gonna do about parking? And how are you gonna figure that in? And we've got about 3 houses across the road that Bill's been checking into. If we build that jail locally, I don't see any way in the world we can not acquire that property across the street.
That might be a wise investment, because right now you have parking issues. And they won't get better, you're absolutely right. You know, we put a big building over there, you're gonna eat up some parking. Unless we replace it.
He's checking on all of it, putting up it all on him.
That's right. So,
And you've got some parking issues now. It's been many a time I've had to park behind Gino's car that's not even in a parking place because they're wet the parking place, and go in there and go, hey, when you get ready to leave, let me know, because I got you blocked in. So, I mean, you already got a parking problem.
so yeah, I think that would be wise to anticipate that and, you know, plan for that.
Well, the current jail still has to stay functional all this time that we're building. And you're gonna have construction in and out, blocking pods.
Another thing is, you know, contractor laydown area for the materials. You know, we got a tight site, but like, you know, I showed you that example of Guilford. That was built right downtown Greensboro, right beside their current jail. And we were able to, that's 8-story tall, 1,000-bed facility. So we were able, you know, to do that on a postage stamp site. So there's ways to do it, but, you know, we'll look at that as available, you know, some places that the county does have some convenient spaces for construction laydown. Let's go ahead and anticipate that, and we'll show that on the plans. Again, all that affects keeps the contractor's price low. If they've got to store it off-site somewhere and bring everything in, it's going to cost you more. So we need to plan.
Donald Trump built a tower in New York City, and look how narrow that is.
That's right. It's all possible.
He brought what he needed to work the next day,
That's right.
truck, and unloaded and go ahead. I mean, that's not a problem.
Assuming normal growth and misbehavior of the public, how many cells are we gonna need 2.5 years from now?
It's in your study.
That's right. We've got some, we
Read
did
the book.
some projections, you know. We can pull it up. I've got the.
I did them in 5-year increments. Your bid projections in 5-year increments.
This is.
Whatever we start building today, we're gonna have 2.5.
Mr. Chairman, on some of the detailed questions, I know some of the folks have places they need to be. You want to ask those to them after we adjourn the meeting and some of the detailed stuff.
You have anything else?
No, I have nothing else.
You think we're ready to call it a day?
I do.
Anybody have anything else? Meeting's adjourned.
Thank you.
Hey, Bill.
This is funny.
You talk to
A lot of that'll have to do with certification, what we use it for. We use it for reentry. We use it for, say, treatment, reentry, that kind of thing. It doesn't have to be built to spray walls over. Oh, the annex. Yeah, Bob Bass, the guy from TCI, is here. That's the guy on that.
Hey, buddy, good to see you. Cute little face in here. I want you to say that in 3 years.
Well, we probably discussed that. You know, we had one thing. That was part of it. Trying to solve it, we're still using bolt cutters. These tree we did before. I can show you a lot of this. You're made
Okay.